Welcome to Two Mothers, One Aché, a grief dialogue. I'm Dionne.
And I'm Yvette. We're mothers, friends, and sisters in grief.
I lost my daughter, Siwe, at 15 years old.
And I lost my son, Dasan, at 26.
This podcast is our space to talk about grief, how it shapes us, how it lingers, and how love carries us through. Welcome to the conversation.
Hey, girl. Hi. You know what the people don't know?
What?
That you and I have literally been around the world and back.
Miss. You ain't lying, miss. You ain't lying, miss.
I'm not lying. And welcome back.
Thank you. Welcome back.
You.
I'm so happy to see you. I've missed
Welcome
you.
back to you, and then welcome back to all of our friends here that are tuning in to Mothers and One Aché. And I'm Yvette Dávila, your co-host.
And I am Dionne C. Monsanto, your co-host. So excited to be here with you today on Two Mothers, One Aché. We're so excited. Well, you know what? I'm going to let you start, Yvette, while I catch my breath.
Okay. I'm going to be reading quite a bit on this one. I had to script this one out. So bear with me because the words that I wrote are the right words. If I go off the cuff, I might get a little confused. I'll let you guys know why. Before we begin today's conversation, we want to offer a gentle note. This episode explores how grief shows up within the context of addiction and the complex, often conflicting emotions that come with it. For some, this may feel very heavy or even triggering. If you find yourself needing a break or pausing to self-soothe, that is way more than okay. We're here to hold this space with love, with empathy, and safety. No judgment.
All right. Whew. We want to begin by naming some of the ways that grief shows up in many forms when addiction is a part of the story. And it's not just loss, but it's the loss of the person we hoped for. Because, there's the real person that we know, and then there's the person, their potential, and what we hope they're going to be, and the loss of trust, the loss of years, the loss of safety. And research shows that grief and addiction are deeply intertwined. For example, people who experience complicated or prolonged grief are at significantly higher risk for turning to substances as a way of coping. And thank you, Yvette. I wanted to acknowledge you for acknowledging. We always have notes and we always look at them, and sometimes we are very much off the cuff. But since we also have another guest speaker for you today, we have so much to pack in when there are three of us. And I also want to share on the top that with addiction is in my family. I've always said I have such deep respect for all the substances. I won't try anything because I'm a heroin addict that has never tried heroin. So, yeah. Back to you, Yvette.
Well, just to add to that, Dionne, more than 20 million Americans aged 12 and older battle a substance use disorder, which we're saying addiction, and the clinical term is substance use disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And in recent years, which means that addiction touches countless lives and families, including yours, including mine. Yeah.
Now, I want to pause because I think I also should let you know I'm literally coming to this after coming from a funeral, and I have another one this weekend. I'll bring in their names later on. And this subject matter is so dense. Where I am in my personal life feels dense and heavy. So I strongly encourage you at home, our listeners, of course, you're going to do it with me, Yvette, and that we're going to do our breath work, which is really important. And it's grounding for all of us, but it really sets the tone for Evie and I before we move forward. So today, I want to do a heart-centered breathing. It's be a little weird as you're listening to this. We'll see how it goes because there's a humming sound. And I think of it as the breath of the busy bee, The Sanskrit word is Brahmari. And this particular breathing exercise is humming. And I find it self-soothing. And you heard Yvette saying, like, if you need self-care and you need to step away to self-soothe, so this breath will be a tool that you have if you need to step away. So I tend to close my eyes when I'm doing this. I'll place a hand on my heart, a hand on my belly. And we all know what bees sound like. So as I take a deep breath in, when I exhale, it's going to be a humming sound. And we'll only do this for a few breaths. Everybody together, pull air in, and then we'll hum it out. When that breath empties, you just start all over again. You don't have to wait for me. And you'll notice the feeling on your teeth, your chin, your jaw, your belly. One last one together.
I needed
Oh,
that. Thank you,
I
Dionne.
needed that so much. Oh, the
Yeah.
breath of life. So powerful, so impactful, and it's always there for you, my friends. All right, go ahead, Yvette.
Okay, so now we're ready for this to tackle this complicated and difficult conversation in the space that we're creating here. It's full of love, it's empathy, it's full of safety. There's no judgment, it's only compassion. Because talking about addiction through the lens of grief helps us to see that underneath every story of struggle, there's usually a story of pain, of love, and of survival. I'm very excited to I'm already starting. I'm very excited today to introduce and welcome our guest. Our guest
Well, you
is.
take a breath. I can tell you about it.
Thank you.
Tell you about it. You take a breath. All
Thank you,
emotions
Dee.
are welcome, my love.
Thank you.
Our guest is a licensed professional counselor and licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor based in New Jersey with nearly 14 years of experience. Her approach integrates existential, client-centered, cognitive behavioral, and dialectical behavior therapies. So you may have heard it as CBT and DBT, while exploring the influence of family roles and dynamics. She has worked across diverse settings, from outpatient therapy and school-based programs to domestic violence shelters and inpatient rehabilitation. Jill specializes in anxiety, trauma, addiction, codependency, as well as relationship and attachment challenges. Grounded in strengths-based philosophy, she helps clients cultivate balance and self-compassion, guiding them toward living a clean, mindful, and non-judgmental life, one moment at a time. We are so deeply honored to be joined by Yvette's longtime therapist and dear friend, Jill Mackey.
Yay!
Jill, we said a lot of bad things about you.
Welcome. Okay, so listen, before we begin, I have to put out a disclaimer, okay? So, I want to share this really quick disclaimer. I want to let all of you guys know that the stories and experiences that I will share and speak about today are my own stories to tell. While Jill is my personal therapist, she's here today in her role as an expert to help us explore this topic, not as my clinician today. Any overlap between stories that we discuss are purely coincidental. No rules are being broken, no laws are being broken, and this conversation is intended for educational, healing, educational and healing purposes. It is not for therapy.
That's right. So, hello, Jill.
Hi, thank you for having me.
We're
a
so
blessing.
excited to have you. We love having people sit at the table with us with their cup of tea, their water, whatever they have.
Yeah, what you got, Jill?
Yes.
Okay.
There you
Dionne,
go.
by the way, Dionne often has 2 drinks. And so I just want you to know that you both are overachievers. Absolutely. 2 big time overachievers in my life. I
So we
just
say
have
it's
my
a
water
drinking
today.
problem, right? It's
Yeah.
a drinking
Yeah.
problem.
There we go.
It's a
Listen.
drinking problem.
You gotta do what you gotta do. All right, ladies. Before we delve in, I just want to name something that's often left unspoken.
Ooh, child.
When addiction, again, and we told you the clinical term, we often use the word addiction, so we are not using that term to offend anyone. But when addiction enters a family or relationship, grief begins long before anyone is gone. There's confusion, fear, anger, and often guilt, and all of them are swirling together. And we grieve the person as they change. We grieve the version of ourselves that believed we could save them. So today, we really want to unpack what all of that means and the many faces of grief that come along with addiction. And Jill, you have helped so many people understand that this intersection of loss and survival, right? And so to start off, how do you define addiction grief, and how does it differ from what we think of as traditional, air quotes, traditional grief?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that you put the air quotes there. Grief is so confusing, and grief related to addiction is so disenfranchised. And I say that because when you have a child who has mental health issues, or a child who is an addict or an alcoholic or struggling to get sober, right, or they pass away, or there's an overdose or something like that, there's a lot of like, well, you didn't know, or like, how did you not, like, are you a bad parent? Right? That's not what's said, but that's sort of like underlying. So not only are they grieving the loss of their child, their loss of their whoever passed away from this, right? They're also dealing with the shame and all of the disenfranchised feelings, right? Of, do I even deserve to grieve? I mean, they did it to themselves, right? Like, they asked for this, right? When we know, obviously, it's a disease, right? And we know that nobody asked for it, right? But much like, somebody who passes away from cancer or liver disease or something in their 80s or 90s, it's like, oh, they had their time and all of that. But when it's grief related, or if it's addiction related grief, right? There's so much underlying, there's so much under the surface, right? And the way I sort of describe it is, grief is like a spider's web, right? Like, it's so
Ooh.
intricate and beautiful and nuanced, and we're trying to figure out our way in the world. And addiction sort of comes in like a big hand that just like swats the spider web away and makes the process even messier than it needs to be.
I love that example you gave of swatting the spider web away, because as you did that, then I'm like, oh, now I've got this on my, like, okay, is it really
Yeah.
gone? I swatted away, but now it's here. And now, what do I do with it?
Yeah.
Right? Um,
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
you,
Mhm.
let's move into like, what are some of the early emotional signs that loved ones experience when someone they care about becomes addicted?
So if we were to look in the DSM-5, right, as I was sort of answering this, it's the same symptoms that happen to the person who's an addict or an alcoholic are the same symptoms that are happening to the family member, right?
Yeah.
Tolerance, right, for an addict or an alcoholic, right? Our tolerance increases or decreases, right? They're going through maybe withdrawal. We're going through withdrawal in terms of our frustration or upset or wondering where they are, right? They're breaking their own rules about addiction. We're breaking our own rules. We might be out looking for them, looking through their social media. What are they doing? Right. They might be going through cravings. So are we, right? Maybe they're getting a DUI, legal issues. Maybe we're breaking in places. So the same things that are happening to them are the same things that are happening to us, just emotionally. Codependency, obsessing, right? It's actually kind of frightening to think that the same thing happens to us.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I think when I personally started attending Al Anon meetings based on the family connection, do you remember the 3 C's? It's, I didn't
Yeah.
cause it, I can't control it, and I can't cure it. Did I get it right, Jill?
Yeah. Yeah, it's cure or change. They
Okay.
rotate, but they could even be the 4 Cs if we wanted to be.
Right. But
Yeah.
it makes a difference when you mentioned the codependency and that aspect
Mhm.
of, and even the part of like, oh, I can't save them. And how was it my fault? And
Yes.
people don't even say it. When you said shame, and you know this, Evie, right? We've,
Yes.
in other episodes, you've talked about your mom. And it's like
Right.
when people say, they won't even say that someone is an alcoholic or that they're drinking. They're just like, because you know, and
Yeah, right.
they
Exactly.
signal with the hand like they're drinking
Mhm.
something, but like you can't even say the word
Yeah.
alcoholic. you know.
Yeah.
Um,
You know,
Yeah. Day drinks, right? Toe
yeah, that's
off,
right.
I hear,
Yeah,
right? I
because
mean, I
it's so socially acceptable too, right? And
Mhm.
it's easy to hide if you're overdoing it.
Yes.
You just look like, a fun time gal or a fun time guy. I
Yes.
really want to talk about the phenomenon of mourning the living, because Dionne and I
Mm.
often talk about anticipatory grief.
mhm,
You know, when you see someone that may be on the path or is on the path to transitioning, grieving the person before their actual physical death occurs. What's your take on that when it comes to addiction specifically?
Yeah, anticipatory grief is so challenging because addiction is sort of like a doorway that like you didn't want to cross through, but once you cross through it, the door's closed and you can't get back through and you're sort of in this like spiritual bypass in between, right? Like you're not certain they're going to pass away from addiction, but you know it's not good and you know it's not going anywhere where you want it to go. And now you're kind of like in a hotel room where you're locked in between the two doors into the other hotel room, right? It's probably not the greatest place to be hanging out. And we're grieving, right? Anticipatory grief of who they are, who we are, right? Especially a mom or a dad or whoever who's out looking for their kid. They're up all night. They haven't slept in a week, right? They haven't eaten. They're losing weight, right? When I used to work at the rehab, the moms and the dads who would visit their children, they aged 10 years in a period of a year, right? Like the loss of themselves and even like can't go to yoga, can't go to, can't do anything. Cause like, what if I leave my kids gonna, right? If I go on a vacation, what if they rob the house, right? There's just no safety. So it's the loss of safety. It's the loss of who they are, right? You want to go on vacations and the whole time maybe the kid is looking for drugs while you're on the vacation, right? It just, the moments, the memories, Thanksgiving, you got to hide your bags. What if they're looking through them and stealing, right? It's just everything is different when you have an addict or an alcoholic in your family. And that's all before they even pass away. There's like a million acceptances along the way, right? You have a family reunion, right? And everybody's coming. It's like, oh, where's your kid? It's like, nodded out on the couch somewhere. I don't know. How do you
yeah,
explain that, right? Are
Yeah,
they going to
how
college?
do you explain that, right? Like,
Right.
yeah,
Are they in the
yeah.
it's
military?
funny,
No, right?
Joe, when you mentioned like, hiding your stuff and
Mhm,
I got this like crazy flashback of like growing up and
mhm,
I've shared with Jill and I'm going to share with the rest of you right now. Like I grew up literally in a family of addicts. Like there were more addicts in my family than there were not.
Mm,
And so growing up, it was normal life to just hide
right.
stuff. And I find myself tucking. I'm a tucker. I'll tuck things away and I'll even forget that I've tucked them away. But
Girl,
it's just a natural thing for me to tuck things away.
when I tell you, Yvette, what you just said, because I have pictures, I'm thinking of an uncle. May he rest in peace. He has gone on, Uncle Larry. Things go missing, and Uncle Larry's at the house, and he would stay. It was me, my mom, my sister. He'd stay at the house. And it was so normalized that he was on a substance and he was going to take something. If something went missing, they're going to looking at you like, well, why you didn't put it away? Jill, you didn't put it
Mhm,
away? Evie,
mhm,
you didn't put it away?
That's
You
right.
knew he
It's
was
your
coming
mhm.
fault.
over.
Mm-hmm.
You know he was
Victim
coming
blaming,
over.
right? It's your fault. It's your
Your
fault that you
fault.
didn't hide something that they shouldn't have. Yeah,
That's
they
right.
So
shouldn't have taken.
you're right. And I never thought about it because like this jacket I haven't worn in a while. So help me. I pick up a jacket, I go in the pocket. Like if I ever really need some money, y'all, all I need to do is go through all my pockets because there's money in the coat pockets, there's money in the jean pockets, there's money in the bottom of the bag. If I have $20 in my wallet around the house somewhere, there's probably 200 because there's 5 here, there's
Mhm,
10 there, there's 20
mhm,
there. There's a cup in
mhm.
the like. I won't tell y'all where the cup is in my house.
That's right.
I'm
Don't
not
tell nobody.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Um,
Mhm, mhm.
that's there. We talked about it in the beginning, just for a second, and I said the word potential. So
Right.
this comes up, and especially because I'm thinking of my uncle and my father, and then even my son's father and grandfather, and my son's uncle. I just want to talk about grieving the potential and mourning who they could have been. Like
Yeah.
George, my son's father, would talk about his brother, said he was brilliant. He was an engineer. He could take anything apart and put it
Mhm,
back together, but he got stuck using, you
mhm,
know? Um, so it's like,
mhm.
What about that, Jill?
Yeah, it's such a rabbit hole because I think about that all the time, right? When, say I'm sick or something like that, I'm like, I bet the cure for cancer is like in the mind of somebody who's an addict and an alcoholic, and it's just trapped in there, right? Because I don't know about you guys, right? But a lot of addicts and alcoholics are some of the most brilliant people that I've ever met. So determined, so motivated, so capable, fantastic athletes, right? Too big for this world in some ways, right? Like too good at things, right? And it's almost like drugs are like the great equalizer. Alcohol's the great equalizer. Like it brings them down to that human level. And yeah, I mean, it's who they could have been, right? What we hoped was going to happen, right? Whether their potential was to go to college or be an engineer or some sort of athlete or something like that. And then all we're sort of left with is our stories, right? About who they could have been. And we don't really know. And then every year that passes and other people graduate and other people get married and other people who, have children, right? Then it's another loss. It's another acceptance, right? Of, maybe being a grandma, maybe being a grandfather, right? Maybe being a mother-in-law, all those things. So it's not only just accepting what they could have been and what their potential would have been, right? Which is a fantasy, but it's also what our potential, right, could have been, right? And all of these are changes we didn't ask for, by the way, right? So change is very challenging, especially when it's something we didn't ask for.
I love that you keep bringing it back around, Jill, to we suffer the way that they suffer.
Yeah.
We experience what they're experiencing. It's through a different lens, but the emotional impact is the same. And, I work in entertainment. I've told our friends that tune in already that, I'm a music industry executive, and whoa, how much usage happens in this business. And I find that to your point, the highly creative, it really exists in another plane. Like their minds, their ability to download and to create is truly outworldly, otherworldly. Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. Yes, otherworldly. And to your point, Jill, the great equalizer are these substances because they do make them feel normal. They do, or at least standard, right? Like I hate the word normal, like more standard within society. So yeah, I mean, gosh, how many people could we look at, right, and say, man, what could have they been? I look at Ray Charles or whoever else, right? Like the names are endless almost.
And we'll be right back.
Welcome to Merrick Studios, where stories take the mic and culture comes alive.
We're not just a network, we're family, bringing you smart, soulful, unfiltered conversations.
And this season, we're bringing the heat with our biggest lineup yet. Whatever you're into, music, sports, business, we got you covered.
Merrick Studios, where the conversation starts and keeps going.
Check out our full lineup, including Unglossy with Bun B, Jeffrey Sledge, and myself, Tom Frank. Now streaming at wearemerrickstudios.com.
Master the art of lyricism with Pendulum Mink, the first school for rap. Learn elite techniques through immersive lessons, real-world exercises, and guidance from hip-hop icons. This is where MCs sharpen their skills and glow boldly on the mic. Ready to level up? Visit pendulummink.com and start your journey today.
And now, back to the show.
Well, Jill said, Jill's over there dropping bars, and I'm not taking notes well, because Jill also said something about this spiritual bypass, this in-between area that they're trapped in. So when we think of being spiritual people, and some people often look at heaven and hell, and then people often talk about purgatory. So there's this, what you said was a spiritual bypass. It made me think of purgatory. And then, them using something to the point where it's a disorder and it helps them feel dealable or makes life bearable or makes, because I'm like, man, maybe it softens the blow of what it's like for them to deal with us.
All of it. Yeah. Yeah. It's Jill plus one beer, Jill plus two beers, right? Like they being themselves is too much or too little or just not enough. Their skin's too tight, right? So Yvette, to what you were saying, of course, I'm always bringing it back to us and the family disease because that's what we do as codependents. It's all about them, right? If you've ever been to an Al-Anon meeting or ACA, right, it's like a lot of people don't even introduce themselves. They're like, oh, Carl's in rehab again and Joe's doing this. I'm like, what's your name? Who are you? How are you doing? right? Because the addict's clean, so I don't need to go to treatment anymore. I don't need to go to rehabs anymore. I don't need to go to AA anymore, Al-Anon, right? Because as long as they're doing well, then I'm doing well. But that is not true, right? When we have family members in addiction or even out of addiction, right? I always say that it's a family disease, number one. And number two, that addiction is like jail or prison with the possibility of parole. We too are in a life sentence with this disease. As long as they're sober, we're okay. That's not true. It's really not. And it shouldn't
My
be true. We
gosh,
should
what
be
a
able to
harsh
draw.
reality, huh?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm over here taking deep breaths, girl. Clutching my pearls. I'm clutching my pearls. Okay.
You know, when someone we love is struggling with addiction, many of us move into overdrive trying to fix them, trying to manage it, try to save. Dionne made this point earlier. How do those impulses to control become part of our own survival pattern? And what does healing look like when we finally let go?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the first steps in AA, Al-Anon, ACA, all the steps is unmanageability and powerlessness, right? When we notice our own powerlessness over other people, right? That just can't be, right? This is our kid, this is our partner, this is our whoever. Like we have to be able to do something. We're going to hide the booze. We're going to lock the keys in the car. We're going to tie him to the radiator. That's an AA joke. They're like, tie him to the radiator, lock him in the room. We're not going to let him out, right? We do all these moves, all these maneuvers, right? And we think about it all the time. We talk about it all the time. We wear everybody out, right? So there's stages of grief associated with acceptance in terms of our kid or our family member being an addict as well. So in terms of healing, right, it's about accepting and tolerating, right? About releasing the codependency. It's like the 3 C's, like you'd mentioned, right? I can't change it, can't control it, didn't cause it. It happened before me, right? You know, the generational nature of all of this, right? Accepting the origin story, right? That it wasn't our fault. And even if it was, quote, part of our DNA and part of our learned behavior, we go to therapy, we heal, we can also help them heal too. It's their responsibility to get clean and sober. We cannot get clean and sober for somebody else, right? So there's the enmeshment and the enabling piece too. What our part is not necessarily that it's our fault they're an addict or an alcoholic. What part are we playing in terms of continuing it? Am I giving them money? Am I giving them the keys to the car? Am I allowing them to not work? Am I allowing them to live in the house without paying rent? On and on and on. I mean, I could bore you for hours about our role, and often our role is not what we think it is, right? We try to manage the uncontrollables instead of managing the controllables.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to remind all of y'all to take a breath as I remind myself to take a breath while Will's over there dropping bars, because while you're processing this information, for me, processing it in group with all of you and thinking of my family and what part where I don't know about you, Evie. I was definitely the one to try to control, draw the lines on the bottles, right? Where's my
Oh.
stuff going,
Oh, please. I would throw my mother's gin out. You know, her drink was gin. And I would dump it and then put water in there and just be like, you know what? I'll take her wrath afterwards, but tonight she gonna be sober.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yep. Yeah. All the moves, right? We're drinking it, we're dumping it out, we're sharing it with them, we're hiding it, anything we can do aside from accepting, right? And especially as a kid, right? We're 10, 12, 13, 14 years old, and we see the progression of the addiction, right? And we're going to do anything we can do, right? And unfortunately, that's very little.
That's
which is hard to accept. Like, some of us that are the doers are the ones, because my tribe of people, including Evie, you're in the tribe now, Jill, are the ones in the family. It's like when something needs to be done, they're going to call Evie, they're going to call Dionne, they're going to call Jill,
Totally.
and then we figure out how to get it done. So now something shows up that we can't get done.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. And then I want to move, like, we covered some stuff and we broke down like some other things that we want to cover in here. And again, coming from a funeral today, someone you love, they die. It feels like an ocean, right? My business name is Joyous Ocean, and there's no clear edge. There's no solid ground. And then you learn later that addiction played a role, and the water gets deeper and the grief shifts and it takes on new forms, because now you've got shock and there's confusion and there's guilt and there's anger and disbelief. And you talked about judgment earlier, Jill, right? You couldn't do anything about it. And then of course the stigma. There's so much stigma attached to it. And there's just like a desperate need to try to make sense of it. So what was that like for you, Evie?
Ooh. Okay, so when I started to script this episode or put it together, it was very, very, very important for me to share this very deep part of my grief with Dasan. So for me, that moment came 6 months after losing Dasan. And I'm gonna read this because my brain is going crazy right now. I learned that kratom, which is an herb, which is starting to get a lot of pickup in the news. 4 years ago, a lot of people didn't know about it. They sell it. It's an herb. It comes from like Asia. They sell it in gas stations now in the form of liquid. They sell it as a herb that you can make tea, like in smoke shops. He used to get his from the smoke shop. It operates almost like an opioid, right? And so think methadone to heroin. Well, he was using it in order to get off of alcohol because Dasan had an alcohol problem. And kratom, I found out 6 months after he passed away through the medical examiner, was actually the cause of his cardiac arrest. And so a lot of people don't know this, but I have 2 death certificates for him. The first one, which said that he died of sudden cardiac death. And the second one says that it was an overdose that caused a sudden cardiac death. So how did they know this? It didn't come up in the toxicology report that they, when they put him on life support and he was in the hospital for 8 days. It was not in the toxicology report because they don't screen for that. It's not one of the, the top drugs that they screen for.
Yeah. Breathe, girl, breathe.
I am.
We've talked a little bit about it, and I know let me tell you something about Evie. If you need to get to the bottom of something and you need somebody to research the hell out of it, that's Evie. That is her. So she got this information and
I didn't know that he was taking kratom until Ren, his wife, my daughter-in-law, she at the hospital, when I finally got to the hospital, she had the bag with her. She was just like, he's been taking this, Evie, and he wouldn't let me tell you. So 8 days, it took him to pass, and the medical examiner, they cut a piece of his brain to study that. It takes 6 months for them to come to their conclusive. And he still had kratom in his system 8 days later. That's why they were able to determine that it was an overdose. So finding that information out felt like losing him all over again. I had, like, this is 6 months later. I'm in my grief process. I'm in my grief journey. And then I hear this and I'm losing him again by another cause. So every memory I had made peace with suddenly changed meaning. I started to ask new questions, reliving old ones and grieving the truth I hadn't known. So we want to explore this now. The ways that grief can evolve when addiction is part of the story, and how love, compassion, and even survival instincts weave into this process. And thank you, Dee, for carrying me through this.
I got you. It's unbelievable because, and even the fact, I'm going to shout you out and acknowledge you allowing that and wanting for the greater good and the knowing, not just for you, but for the community. I keep bringing this up to people for you to say, take my son and do this research and give me answers and be a part of this greater awareness of us learning about something that's impacting our youth, that's impacting people. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Jill, for always being there for Evie. And thank you for sharing that. I've learned so much from you, Yvette, on screen and off screen. But Jill, when someone learns, right? Someone, in this case, Yvette, but in general, when someone learns that addiction played a role in a loved one's death, what happens to the grieving process emotionally and psychologically?
Yeah, grief is an unraveling anyway. We're already like, you ever had like a piece of lint on your sweater and you pull it and it's not actually lint? You're like, oh, and it just sort of like starts to unravel. And no matter what you do, you can't get it back together. Right. So grief is like that. And when you find out that somebody's an addict or an alcoholic, it's like a blindside when you don't know something. Right. It's like the carpet gets pulled out from under you. Right. There's blame, there's agony, there's questions, right? Like, why didn't they tell me? Why couldn't they tell me? Was it something I did? Was I not a safe space that they couldn't share? What would I have even asked if I could, right? Those are some of the fantasies, right? So there's so much confusion, so much shame, and there's a lot of judgment and like we're going to go into in terms of isolation, right? Like we don't want to tell anybody because we don't want other people's scrutiny or other people's judgment or other people's shame or other people's thoughts about not my kid, that wouldn't happen to me, right? Because it can happen to anybody, we know that, right? And so really we almost bottom out again is basically what I'm trying to say. Like we lose them again. We lose the certainty, right? We lose what ground we had covered, right? And, I mean, it would be like figuring out that you were adopted at 30 years old, right? It's
Ooh,
like, wait,
child.
what? Wait, what? Like everything you thought you knew, right? Like figuring out a partner had cheated after a very, very long period of time, figuring out you were adopted after a prolonged period of time. Everything you thought you knew that was like your North Star, right? That was your grounding spot was now no longer that. And it not only do we question that, but now we question everything. Because if that can happen, then anything can happen.
Yeah, yeah. And that is, I mean, every example, and I literally know somebody going through the marriage example of, I know somebody like, yes, yes, yes. And the adoption's like, what do you mean? I think Kerry
Yeah.
Washington talks about that. Oh, I think that's a
Right.
spoiler alert. She talks about one of these things in her book, in her memoir. If enough people have read it, it's not a spoiler alert. But yes, our identity is so deeply intertwined with
Right.
the identity of others. So if these are my mother and father, now you say they're not, and it is a rug being pulled out. Even as you said it, Jill, I felt you said blindside, and I felt a punch. Like
Yep.
somebody's, it's like,
Sucker punch. Exactly.
sucker punch. Yes. You feel like you've been sucker punched. And for me, I'm always in awe of people that are dealing with this, but then it feels like, how? Like, how can you even begin to integrate? Like, things are so disconnected. How do you start to weave them back together? Like, you give such great analogies, your sweater being unraveling. So, like, how do you integrate this new information, this unexpected information, that their grief and they feel like they're starting all over, which is what Evie just said. Like, wait a minute. I'm at this point and now I'm back at this point. It's that 4 steps forward, 2 steps back. You're going to get car sick just trying to heal.
Yeah. Yeah. So with grief, it's like expecting the unexpected, right? So we feel like we're all the way back at the beginning, right? And I know I've had this conversation with many clients, right? There is no back to the beginning. That wouldn't even be possible, right? There's no way to go back to the beginning. We've gained so much ground, right? If we were to use Everest as an example, right? We don't climb all the way up to the top, right? There's resting spots, right? So even if we rolled all the way back down, we'd only roll to the closest resting spot that we were at, right? So the 2 steps forward, the 1 step back, the 2 steps forward, the 1 steps back. That is grief, right? 2 steps forward is 1 step back. 1 step back is 2 steps forward, right? Like just accepting that is what's going to happen to us, right? And so also too, I think a big piece is reclaiming our power and reclaiming our story. Like this is just a new piece of information that I'm integrating into the story, right? So if I were to be braiding my hair here, right? I'm just braiding it. It's just like, oh, new piece of information. I'm just weaving it in to the story, right? I'm just braiding it into the story as opposed to viewing this as something that's so far over here that now I have to go all the way over here to get it, right? We're just braiding it all together. This is a new narrative. Like we love stories. Brene Brown talks about that all the time. We love stories, right? This is just a new story. This is a new story. This is a plot twist, right? And we get to decide how much power we give it, right? We get to decide if that changes our relationship with the person who passes away. We get to decide who even hears the information, right? We're choosing to share the information here today for the greater good, right? But we get to decide how much power it has. A big piece is reclaiming our power and radical ownership over our own grief story.
Wow. Wow.
That was part 1 of our conversation with Jill Mackey on grief and addiction. Stay tuned for part 2, dropping on Thursday, December 18th.
We'd love for you to join the conversation with us on Instagram at 2, that's the number 2, mothers, 1, the number 1, Aché pod. And produced and distributed by Merrick Studios.
Until next time, may love carry you through.